Susan Close is the South Australian Water Minister. Susan, we have spoken multiple times, I think, about the desalination situation on the Eyre Peninsula. We're moving closer to a solution.
We are. The government's announced that the site that we're pursuing is Billy Lights Point, which is very close to Port Lincoln. It was the site that was used as the base case by the site selection committee that was made up of a number of local people looking at various options and was chaired by Peter Treloar. We're now at a place where we've looked at all of the other options and we're going to have to go with Billy Lights Point and do the additional work required to build the case to get the final approval.
And I note that there's a significant price tag attached to what the site selection committee wanted on the southern end of the Eyre Peninsula as opposed to Billy Lights Point's cost.
Unfortunately, yes. So there are some locals who were concerned about Billy Lights Point because of some aquaculture not far away. And so that was why there was an effort to see if there was an alternative. And two things have happened. One is that the Sleaford West site, which was identified by the site selection committee, is approximately $150 million more than the Billy Lights Point site, which is obviously a big problem because we don't have a spare $150 million, and I'm not sure that water payers across South Australia want to pay that additional amount to move it. But most importantly, we've done an additional study to check what the impact of salinity coming out of a desalination plant would be at the Billy Lights location. And the SARDI report finds that the variability would be less than you see naturally occurring in that area. So you're not going to have that additional salinity load above that normal variation, which is about 4%. It varies from time to time. It would only be a bit over 1% variability due to the desalination plant. So that's just really reinforced that there is nothing wrong with Billy Lights Point as a location environmentally, and it's much, much more affordable. It's already a more than $300 million plant that we're contemplating, but it's utterly necessary. We cannot allow Port Lincoln to run out of water. We can't allow the Eyre Peninsula, and that is a clear and present danger post-2025. So we have to get cracking.
And speaking of getting cracking, when we look further north, SA Water, whose advice you've relied upon to choose Billy Lights Point, they're also looking at this Northern Water Supply project. What is that intended to supply, and how does that interface with the scoping of this project?
Yeah, look, that's an excellent question. So the Northern Water Project is one that is still in the fairly early days, although there has been a lot of work done under the last government and under this government. It's really about support for Whyalla and the mining and hydrogen plants that are in existence and will come into existence around that area. And there's a building up a business case at the moment to determine whether a large-scale desalination plant would make sense. If it does, obviously we're very interested in whether that's yet another answer for SA Water. There is a challenge of how much it would cost to pipe and pump that amount of water. There isn't a pipe that's big enough to take the water now. We'd have to build a new one to supply the Eyre Peninsula and particularly Port Lincoln. So we're having a very careful look at that. If that suddenly becomes an easier proposition, fantastic. But we can't afford to not proceed with what we know will work and at least do that groundwork and build that final business case so that we can get final approval for Billy Lights. In that time, we'll see what's happening with Northern Water. We have to be flexible, but we simply can't afford to allow Port Lincoln to face the very serious risk of actually not having enough water to function.
Now, I know we're tight for time, Susan Close, but just one last question about the desalination. Is there a prospect there could be some further over on the west coast to supplement this, or is it likely Billy Lights will be for the whole Eyre Peninsula and west coast into the future?
The expectation is that it will certainly be for the Eyre Peninsula and that we will be able to have it as a modular plant. So we're looking at about 5.3 gigalitre capacity at the moment, but what we will see is if it's necessary to build further in the future, then that would be possible. And when we did that scientific study of the impact, we modelled for a much larger plant as well so that we could understand whether that would cause an issue, which it didn't. So we are absolutely ready to do that in the future, but not in the near future. Whether there will be other desalination plants is an excellent question because, unfortunately, with climate change, what we're seeing is a general drying of South Australia, despite all the rain that we've had recently. And we are going to have to work out how we make sure that communities have enough water. So we've built, we have about 10 altogether at the moment. We're building one on Kangaroo Island at the moment. Obviously we have the big one in Adelaide, then we have a number of smaller ones. We're going to have to continue to monitor water supply because you simply can't have a community, you can't have primary production without some access to water.
Well, Susan Close, Water Minister, thanks so much for that update and joining us today on Flow FM.
Thank you.